It was just another sunny afternoon at the luxurious estate of billionaire entrepreneur Robert Langford. He had everything money could buy: a sprawling mansion, fancy cars, and a high powered career. Yet, despite his riches, Robert couldn't shake the feeling that life lacked something, maybe a bit of excitement, something unpredictable. Little did he know, a chance encounter with a young boy would provide the thrill he had been craving. That day, Robert was visiting his estate for the weekend, and his routine was as predictable as ever. His staff, efficient and meticulous, had already prepared the house for his arrival. Among them was a maid named Clara, a humble woman who had worked at the Langford estate for years. Clara was known for her warmth, intelligence, and work ethic, but what most didn't know was that her son, Marcus, was quietly developing into an extraordinary child. Marcus, now 12, had grown up with Clara and spent his time at the mansion when school was out. He was often seen sitting in the corner, reading books, and occasionally challenging Robert's butlers to games of chess. The staff noticed that Marcus had an uncanny ability to master complex strategies, yet Robert had never paid much attention. One afternoon, as Robert walked through the house, he spotted Marcus sitting alone, intensely studying a chessboard. A mischievous thought struck him. A game of chess against the boy seemed like a perfect way to lighten the mood and have a bit of fun. He had no intention of making the game serious. After all, how could a young boy, the son of a maid, pose a real challenge to someone of his intellect? Laughing to himself, Robert called Marcus over and jokingly asked if he'd like to play a game of chess. Marcus hesitated, sensing the lighthearted tone in Robert's voice. But never one to shy away from a challenge, Marcus agreed. Little did Robert know that this simple, almost careless invitation would change everything. Robert Langford sat confidently at the grand chess table, fully expecting to defeat Marcus in mere minutes. He had played chess in his youth, and while he wasn't a grandmaster, he was more than capable of handling a beginner. In his mind, Marcus was just a naive, young boy, someone who would hardly be able to match his skill. It was supposed to be a fun diversion, nothing more. Marcus, on the other hand, took his seat with a quiet focus that surprised Robert. He wasn't nervous or intimidated. Instead, his mind was already evaluating the chessboard, calculating several moves ahead. What Robert didn't realize was that Marcus had been playing chess since he was 5, learning from a family friend who happened to be a former chess champion. Over the years, Marcus's talent had grown in leaps and bounds, even though he kept it hidden from others. The game began with Robert confidently moving his pieces, making what he thought were smart strategic moves. However, Marcus responded with precision. His moves were calculated and deliberate. As the game progressed, Robert started to feel something he hadn't anticipated: uncertainty. The once confident billionaire was now starting to struggle, trying to keep up with the young boy's brilliance. The difference in skill was becoming more apparent with every move. Robert had underestimated Marcus. The moves were no longer trivial. They were traps, brilliant tactical decisions that forced Robert into a defensive position. Each time Robert tried to outtweet Marcus, the young boy seemed one step ahead. This was no longer just a friendly game, it was a challenge. Marcus's concentration was unwavering as he studied the board, planning each move carefully, his young mind working faster than Robert's could comprehend. By the time the game reached the midpoint, Robert was beginning to sweat. The thought that he might lose to this child never crossed his mind at first, but now the possibility seemed real. What started as a playful joke was quickly becoming a serious test of intellect. As the game continued, Robert couldn't help but feel his pride taking a hit. This wasn't just a child's game. It was clear now. Marcus was not an average player. Robert began to notice the subtle genius in Marcus's play, the ability to anticipate moves, the way he controlled the board with an almost predatory style. He had underestimated the young boy, thinking that just because he came from humble beginnings, he couldn't possess such brilliance. Marcus had taken the initiative early on, setting a pace that was hard for Robert to match. It was as if the boy had been practicing every day, learning new tactics and strategies in secret. The longer the game went on, the more Robert started to question his own assumptions about Marcus and his background. Robert had grown up surrounded by wealth and privilege, and although he was self-made, he was used to the idea that people who had worked in menial jobs like his staff didn't have the same intellectual capacity or ambition as those in his circle. But here, sitting across from him, was a boy who was shattering every preconceived notion Robert had ever had. As Marcus moved his pieces with the same grace and confidence he had shown at the beginning, Robert couldn't deny the truth anymore. This was no ordinary boy. This was a child prodigy, a chess genius in the making. The realization hit Robert hard. Not only was he about to lose the game, but he was also confronting the idea that talent and brilliance didn't depend on background or status. The more Robert thought about it, the more he felt ashamed of his earlier assumptions. He had dismissed Marcus, only to find himself outplayed by the boy's natural genius. As the game neared its climax, Robert found himself on the defensive. Marcus had methodically whittled away at his pieces, maneuvering in ways that Robert had never seen before. The young boy's ability to think several steps ahead was uncanny. Robert tried everything he could to turn the game around, but Marcus's mind worked at a level that Robert couldn't keep up with. With a few final moves, Marcus cornered Robert's king. The checkmate was inevitable. Robert knew it, and so did Marcus. But what surprised Robert the most wasn't just that he was about to lose, it was how calm and composed Marcus remained. For a child, so young, there was no arrogance, no gloating. He played the game with the same humility and focus that had guided him throughout the match. When Marcus finally declared checkmate, Robert sat back in disbelief. He had lost. The game, which he had thought would be a fun distraction, had turned into one of the most intense experiences of his life. He was humbled by the experience, and as the reality of his loss set in, he realized just how wrong he had been about Marcus. Marcus, however, didn't boast about his victory. Instead, he offered a quiet, respectful smile. To him, this wasn't about winning or losing. It was simply the joy of playing the game and honing his craft. Robert sat back in his chair, silently contemplating the game that had just unfolded. His mind raced as he processed the unexpected outcome. How had he missed it? How had he failed to see the potential in Marcus? He had always prided himself on his ability to spot talent, to recognize greatness. But Marcus had slipped under his radar, and in doing so had taught Robert a powerful lesson about assumptions, humility, and respect. From that moment on, Robert's view of Marcus and of people from humble backgrounds changed forever. He realized that genius didn't come with a label or a title. It wasn't about where you came from, what you owned, or what others thought of you. Genius was about potential, passion, and dedication. After the game, Robert made a decision. He would help Marcus further develop his talent. The millionaire, once a man who believed wealth and status defined success, now understood that brilliance could come from anywhere, even from the son of a maid. He saw in Marcus not just a prodigy, but someone who deserved the opportunity to thrive, to reach new heights. Marcus, for his part, had no idea what the game had meant to Robert. He only knew that chess was his passion. What began as a simple challenge had turned into something much greater, a chance to prove that greatness could come from anywhere, even the most unexpected places.